Welcome to Open Your Hymnals, exploring the purpose and value of hymns so we can sing with spirit and understanding. I'm your host, Irene Bennett. So thank you so much. Welcome to the final episode on the hymn I'm a Pilgrim. And it's been such a joy and pleasure sharing this hymn with you in the past 3 weeks. Um, we would just like to repeat a little bit because I realized that there was no sound at all. But let's begin. All right, so welcome to the final episode on the hymn I'm a Pilgrim, and it's been such a joy and pleasure sharing this hymn with you in the past 3 weeks. And I hope that you have gained or regained an interest in hymns through this podcast. For this episode, I'd like to take the time to review the things we have been discussing to kind of cement the knowledge we've learned and also to just distill things into something that is easy to remember. And so, for the first episode, we learned that Mary Dana Schindler wrote I'm a Pilgrim 2 years after her husband and her son died. Mary suffered from malaria while on a trip, and her husband and her 3-year-old son contracted it as well. Mary recovered from the serious illness, but unfortunately, her husband and her son did not. And so there she was in a place where she did not know anybody, far from her family and friends, and then have the closest people to her die in her arms. Yet, in spite of this tragedy, she showed tremendous resilience amidst her grief. She clung to God and knew that there was no other way around this happenstance but to continue to trust in Him. She wrote several books after this, and many of which gained a lot of popularity. While most of her writings dealt with grief, sadness, longing, and affliction, she did not get depressed. Instead, she lifted her eyes upward and looked to heaven for hope, understanding that life on earth is but a pilgrimage. And so, if you are interested in learning more about Mary and her experiences, we talked about that in episode 1. Now, in episode 2, we took our magnifying glasses and looked at the text of I'm a Pilgrim closer. It gave us a glimpse of what life is like as a traveler, longing for the heavenly and not the earthly home. Do you remember the early Adventists or the Millerites? Well, these are the group of people who were following the messages of William Miller, a man whom the Lord chose to be the one to share his studies on Daniel 8:14 during the early 1800s. His interpretation of Christ's coming soon led many people to different reactions. And while there were many people who accepted it and felt the urgency to reconcile their lives with God, there were also those who mocked the message, mocked the man that preached it, and mocked the people who were trying their best to follow it. And so, the remnant, the faithful few who closely studied their Bibles and knew for a fact that Jesus is truly coming soon, felt ostracized and jeered at for their beliefs. And they knew the life of pilgrimage and they longed to go home. And so it was not really a surprise that Mary Schindler's words gravitated with them. Last in this episode as well, we had the privilege of interviewing Davin Bennett from Flying by Faith, and he shared with us the story, the inspiring story of James White, who encouraged himself after a hard day's work, yet receiving less than what he deserved. How do you encourage yourself when you have worked so hard and you were not compensated enough? Well, for James White, it was by singing this song, I'm a Pilgrim, as he walked towards his way home from work, reminding himself that he is a traveler, a stranger, and a pilgrim on earth. We did not really talk about the story about James White, but we would like to share it now regarding James White, who is also another Adventist pioneer. He recalled a time when, after giving a series of messages, a song was sung by a certain Brother Gurney, who is often referred to in SDA history as the singing blacksmith. The song made such an impact that after the meeting, one of the attendees, who was a Negro slave actually, pledged almost all of his money just to procure a copy of the song I'm a Pilgrim. And seeing that there was only one sheet of music, Brother Gurney just wrote the man a copy and gave it to him for free. In that episode, we were reminded that as Christians, our lives are to be the life of pilgrims in this world, but not of the world. And we are all on a journey trying to make our way to our real home. Now, in the third episode, we analyzed the music of I'm a Pilgrim. We found out that it was based on a secular song popular in the 1800s. This secular song did not have any vulgar texts, so to speak, but rather it talks about a person's affection and devotion for someone who is separated from him. And this emotion of longing flows over to the music, lending it to be a suitable tune for Mary's text, which carried the same sentiments. We analyzed the musical structure of the song and learned that it used a very basic chord progression. Simple. 1 5 1 5 5 7 5 5 7 1. And so the melody, harmony, rhythm, form, and text, they all worked cohesively to form a song that was easy to remember, catchy, and most importantly, it spoke to the hearts of those who are on a pilgrim journey. Now, besides discussing the ins and outs of the hymn I Am a Pilgrim, we have also been talking about hymns in general. One of the points I brought in at the very beginning was that the hymns represent our beliefs. Whether we sing it individually or in a corporate setting, we declare by singing whatever hymn it is that we believe it to be true. Hence, the hymns are really a representation of a church's doctrine and dogma. And then, in the same vein, it is important that we understand our beliefs so that we can have more appreciation of the hymns that we sing. We also briefly explore the origin of hymns. We normally have attributed the Psalms to be the source of musical songs in the Bible, but we also refer to Paul when he mentioned three different genres of music that he wrote when he wrote to the churches of Ephesus and Colossus. Not only did he mention it, but he also described the functions of these genres. That is mainly to teach each other using songs to admonish, or actually in modern English, to admonish means to scold. So probably, most likely, it means that when we are correcting each other, we can use songs to do it or in a musical tone. And so, also by using songs, we make music not only with our lips or hands, but with our hearts to the Lord. And so, there is so much to unpack regarding this verse, but we will reserve that for another episode. We then continued our exploration by listening to an example of the earliest form of church music composed by Ambrose, Bishop of Milan. We learned that it was through his efforts that hymnody began to thrive, and most church music at this time was based on scriptures sung in a way that was chanted and done in an improvisatory manner. But Ambrose introduced a form where words are paraphrased to match the musical structure. And so Music is not so improvisatory anymore, at least on the hymns spectrum, but written out and taught to the laity. And this way, the music was preserved better, and we are able to still have access to it. Over the years, Ambrose's work became the springboard for hymn writers like Martin Luther and Charles Wesley, and I've read somewhere that hymns are a poor man's theology, in that if nothing else was understood, the hymns provide a common man's summary of the message. And that while we may listen to the sermons at church, it was through the hymns that we can tangibly carry the message everywhere. And so we are really indebted to these writers and musicians for distilling theology into a sung form, making doctrines practical for every believer. Now, in last week's episode, we also went for a quick tour of four of the many hymnals we have in the SDA Church. We looked at the 1849 hymnal that James White published, then the unofficial, um, I call it unofficial because it was not really commanded by the General Conference for it to be made, but it was much loved by a lot of the Adventists. And this is the Christ in Song by F.E. Belden, the nephew of Ellen White. And we also took a little tour on the church hymnal last week. And I think this is the hymnal that is most familiar to Adventist baby boomers because they can probably relate to it since it was published during their era. Now, we saw that the layout of this hymnal was pretty much continued by the current 1985 SDA hymnal because it was somehow yeah, the layout was pretty much the same, and I know that Adventist millennials can relate more to this hymnal because it was published and heavily promoted around this time. And I think one of the cool things that we did last week was to really talk about the importance of organizing the song service with the help of the indexes, a savvy tool located at the back of our hymnals as well as on the hymn page. The details on the hymn page contains many important things that should we want to go deeper, the details can stand as the waymark on which direction we can go. And so if you would like to know a little bit more on organizing your song service, then you can watch episode 3. Now, I'd like to take this time now to briefly go over some of the samples of arrangements of the hymn I'm a Pilgrim. And hopefully, it can inspire our church musicians with some ideas for arranging or introducing a new hymn in their church. But first, let's listen to the original. We learned that I'm a Pilgrim is a result of the practice of contrafacta, wherein Mary Schindler creatively and judiciously fitted her lyrics to a popular song. The original tune of I'm a Pilgrim is from an Italian air entitled Buonanotte, which literally means good night. It talks about longing and separation and bidding the person to have a peaceful sleep in spite of their long distance relationship. And so here is Buonanotte, an Italian air. And so that was the secular song that this hymn was based from. Now, when Mary turned this lovely text into a hymn, the Millerites decided to include it in their hymnal, and J.B. Himes first adapted it, and the Millerites loved it. And James White included it in his hymnals, and basically it was in every Adventist hymnal that was produced ever since. The topic of pilgrimage, a weary traveler longing to get to his destination. This was something the early Adventists can very much relate to. And as a result, we still see this hymn in our current hymnal. And even though it is pretty much phased out from the many hymnals of other denominations where it used to proudly belong. What am I talking about? Well, here you see a graph, and this is from hymnary.org on the trending statistics of I'm a Pilgrim. Its most popular height, if you can see, was during the mid 1800s and kind of phased out in the 1950s. It resurged back up again in the 70s and 90s, but we don't see the 2000s in this graph because much of the hymns today are either stuck in the 80s, and then that by 80s I mean 1980s, or new hymnals just don't include it anymore. And so either way, we are certainly privileged that we have the opportunity to learn this hymn even in the 21st century. The King's Herald is an example where we can liven up and make this hymn into something that we can use as a special music in our church. The rendition that we're about to hear is a very short example because they only used two stanzas, and all throughout they employed all four voices. It's very simple, but with slight changes in harmony and it's very different, at least a little bit different from the harmony and the A hymnal. So this can be an idea for church members to kind of emulate and liven up singing I'm a Pilgrim.
I'm a pilgrim and I'm a stranger. I can tarry but a night. Do not detain me, for I am going to where the fountains are ever flowing. I'm a pilgrim and I'm a stranger. I can tarry but a night. There the sunbeams are ever shining. Oh, my longing heart is there. Here in this country, so dark and dreary, I long have wandered, forlorn and weary. I'm a pilgrim and I'm a stranger. I can tarry but a night.
Okay, and so the next example that we're going to hear is this time a choral rendition. And we will be listening to the Andrews University Singers, conducted by Stephen Zork. And they actually did an album of many early Advent hymns called What Heavenly Music. If you would try to just quickly analyze it as you listen, you will notice that stanza one uses just unison, which is really simple and nice. And they deliberately use dynamics and phrasing to highlight important words. And then we really gain an appreciation for the harmony when they come into the second stanza. Now, if you will notice that the third stanza on this recording is not really the same third stanza that is in the hymnal. Rather, they use a fourth stanza, which is in a different edition or publication. And so, anyway, here's a tip for leading the song service, right? We can have the congregation sing in unison first in the first stanza, and then we can have the choir to sing the second stanza in four-part harmony, and then we can all invite the congregation back to sing the third and final stanza. That way, there's a little bit of variation in the song service. And so, here's the Andrews University singers singing I'm a Pilgrim.
I'm a pilgrim and I'm a stranger. I can tarry but a night. Do not detain me, for I am going to where the fountains are ever flowing. I'm a pilgrim and I'm a stranger. I can tarry but a night. There's the city through which I journey. My Redeemer is its light. There is no sorrow, nor any sighing, nor any tears there, nor any dying. I'm a pilgrim and I'm a stranger. I can tarry but a night. Farewell, dreary earth, thy skin so blighted. In immortal beauty soon you'll be arrayed. He who has formed thee will soon restore thee, and then thy dread curse shall never more be. I'm a pilgrim and I'm a stranger. I can tarry but a night.
Now, for those who are new with this music ministry, Hymns for Worship, I'd like to take this time to introduce a project where I have collaborated with composer and arranger Alejandro Consolacion II. And we recorded the first half of this album, Almost Home, Hymns on the Second Coming of Jesus, at the Union Church in Makati. And the music engineer at the time that we had was Holland Buela, and he's also in the picture with us. And then the second half of the album was recorded at the Kaiserberg piano studio of Sounds Cradle with Reginald Tan. Now, we did this several years ago, pre-pandemic, and I'm just really excited that I can finally introduce to you each song from this album through this podcast. We have made the recording available many years ago, but I never really took the time to launch it. And so recently, we also made the music sheet available to the public, and so just I just want you to listen to it, and maybe you can use this arrangement for meditational moments in the church service, like in a prelude or offertory, or the silent moments in between the parts. And I really loved how it was arranged by AJ or Alejandro, where in the first stanza you're going to hear, a soft, really soft and meditative part. And then as it goes into the second stanza, it was deeper and a more defined harmonies using the lower parts of the piano. And then in the final third stanza, it was richer and more expansive, trying as if trying to portray the traveler's vision of his destination. And then it ends in a softer mode where the pilgrim realizes that he is still traveling. I mean, at least that's the picture that I got from it. And so let's listen to this. I'm a Pilgrim, arranged by Alejandro Consolacion and performed by yours truly. I did say that from the first episode that I'd like to make these things we've been talking about as practical as possible to people. And so I have invited someone special today to break down for us how we can make hymns still enjoyable and an enriching part of the worship, even in the 21st century. And so I'm delighted to welcome our distinguished guest, Jonathan Coo, a seasoned music professor who has left an indelible mark on the academic landscape in the Philippines. Jonathan's extensive career spans teaching at prominent institutions such as Santa Isabel College, Philippine Women's University, St. Paul University, Adventist University of the Philippines, and Ateneo de Manila University. Now, not just a teacher, but a tireless advocate, he actively champions music education through his involvement with MTNA, the Music Teachers National Alliance. His focus on bringing workshops and master classes to teachers beyond Manila reflects his commitment to inclusivity in the world of music education. Adding another note to his repertoire, Sir Jonathan has taken to the airwaves with the captivating radio show Radio Katipunan 87.9, exploring diverse music topics, and we know him there as Prof. Batanes. Today, our conversation with Sir Koo is particularly special as we delve into the heart of the matter, the hymns in church. And as a renowned piano teacher and someone deeply entrenched in the musical fabric of our community, Sir Koo, or Jonathan, sheds his light on the importance of learning hymns, exploring their significance in both education and worship. So join us for these insights as we unravel the layers of Sir Jonathan Koo's musical journey and explore the timeless relevance of hymns in our lives. All resources we mentioned in this interview, this was pre-recorded, but we will be showing all the links in the show notes. So just enjoy, and I hope that you will learn something that you will be so excited about that you can't help but share it with others. So, Jonathan, thank you so much for being with us here, even on such a short notice.
Thank you also, Sister Irene.
Thank you. Okay, so we'll just start with our first question here, because we've been really talking about hymns in this past 4 weeks, and this is actually the fourth and final series for the hymn I'm a Pilgrim. And I'm a Pilgrim is actually this hymn that's like antiquated, a little bit boring for some. And actually, hymns are generally considered to be boring and old and irrelevant by many. So, do you think hymns are still important for us today?
Definitely. Well, here in the Philippines, every Filipino sings, and not only that, every Filipino is a member of a choir. Okay, and I also think there is a revival of choral singing in the whole world. So if you want to be good in choral singing as a chorister, it's important to learn hymns. Why? Because hymns are four part, and it's also a good practice for soprano, alto, tenor, and bass to blend. So that's one important reason why hymns should always be included in worship and in study as well.
That's true. Well, you sound like you like hymns as well. Did you sing hymns a lot when you were growing up?
Yes, not only sing but play. Do you know that playing hymns is one of the secrets to being a good sight reader? So
That's
in the Seventh
true.
Day Adventist Church, yeah, I was telling another denomination. Uh, I think it is only in the Seventh Day Adventist Church that we have family worship in the morning and in the evening. And part of the practice, well, almost every family has a piano at home, and they sing for worship. They sing hymns. So if a child is learning piano and the child learns hymns, the sight reading becomes faster. Why? Normally, when we teach sight reading, it is normally linear or horizontal, right? Note per note. But we realize that if we are looking at the score in chunks or in blocked chords, basically in a vertical way, then that's actually the hymns. So the more the piano student will improve.
That's
And
true.
when you sing hymns at home, it is also a way of, well, ear training. Sometimes naturally, our family will somebody will sing second voice, somebody will suddenly sing bass. So you have an instant choir again in your family worship.
Wow. Yeah, I've never really thought of it that way. It's like you just look at it as, okay, these are hymns and these are songs that my grandma used to sing or my parents used to sing. But not the theological, but the music theory impact of it, it's like it's there. It's
Yeah.
unavoidable.
And
Yeah.
actually, it's not just for piano. I'm sorry. For example, in the church, I notice now that a lot of churches have string ensembles, or they even call them orchestras. And most of the violin players, the cellists, the violists, are barely in the intermediate level. Most of them are beginners. But you know what? They can play hymns right away. Why? Well, if you
Easy.
play hymns, the tenor or the alto line can be repetitive.
Hmm.
So which is good for training. And again, when I say good for sight reading, so you have an instant orchestra as well when you.
Hmm. That's true. Yeah. Well, I remember when I was learning four-part chorale, and my teacher back when I was in elementary would tell me, "Okay, this is just how you play this and this." And in my mind, I was thinking, "This is just like how you play hymns. This is so easy because I have been playing
Exactly.
hymns way before that, you
Yeah.
know." So it really interesting. So just going back to the mainly the Adventist Church, the SDA Church, we have been blessed with so many hymns. Our background as an SDA movement, starting from the time where James White, Ellen White, and all these people back then. Even though it was a very young movement, they really started out having a hymnal. Like they compiled hymnals and hymnal upon hymnal. The Actually, it's interesting because almost every 2 years they would put out a hymnal. But now, the latest and most current hymnal we have is back in 1985. It has been a long, 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 long time. Um, do you think we need to put out a new hymnal, or is it okay that we just have this 1985 hymnal and we're gonna use it until Christ comes?
Well, okay. I think we need a revised edition, not necessarily new songs, but some of the reasons why people are having a hard time singing the hymns is because it has four flats, three flats. Okay, so if you are a violinist or if you're in the province and you play the guitar, if you have an E flat major chord or G flat major chord. It's really difficult, right? So why don't we um, publish a these hymns in easy key signatures: D major, C major, A major, G major, even F major. Just those, and the vocal range. That's another thing.
Mm-hmm.
Some hymns are still too high. Although
Yeah.
if you compare it to the church hymnal, they've lowered it, but it's still high. So we need to
Yeah.
consider that. So yeah, and then probably if we have a maybe not revised or a special edition, for a
Hmm.
special edition, we can focus on Adventist hymns. I mean, meaning Adventist musicians Adventist authors, lyricists. So instead of having 600 hymns, maybe we can have a shorter number of hymns, even just 100 hymns, but just
Mhm.
focusing on our own composers, lyricists, on our own songs, okay, and translating it to different languages. Because I
Yeah,
noticed, yeah, I noticed we have
translating to
an English Filipino, English Tagalog version,
yeah,
but the problem is the hymns that they chose are the old ones. They did
yeah,
not put the new ones, so it defeats the purpose, of the
that's
Seventh Day
true.
Adventist hymnal.
Yeah, I was just talking about that last week in the last episode. I was saying that the hymnals, and maybe it's not just the Philippine edition hymnal, but I've met other students when I was back in Andrews University, and they had the same complaint. It's like these are the old songs that we knew from before that they translated, and it seemed like nobody wanted to really learn the newer songs that are in the hymnal. Do you
Way back in
really?
2000,
Yeah.
sorry, yeah,
Yeah, no, it's
way
okay.
back
Yeah.
in 2000, in 2010, when I visited Scandinavia, I gave some concerts there. So I went to church in Oslo, in Norway, and they have this thick book. It's very different from the SDA hymnal, but because I compared it and I ordered it. I just can't find it right now. I probably gave it to donated it, but it's a violet, a purple thick book but it's all in Norwegian.
Yeah.
It's all in Norwegian, but it's Seventh Day Adventist in Europe. So I don't know. I think some other countries also produce their
Yeah.
own their own
Yeah.
books.
A lot of these hymnals came out after 1985 because there's been some survey. I read it somewhere. I just forgot. I'm gonna try and find it, but they were saying that really the international SDA hymnal, which was the 1985 version, was really more of like a not Eurocentric, but more on the Western side of
Yeah,
selection of
exactly. Yeah,
songs. So
yeah.
never really had that consideration for other churches that are in a like in the opposite side of the world, and that is why
Yes.
you know but since we have the international, we try to really use it all across the board, I think, because we need to have one. But so I remember when I had my own copy of this international hymnal, there's really a lot of good new songs there, right? From the musical standpoint of being in a church and having the being a music leader, I think, how do we engage the congregation to learn these new hymns, especially now,
Okay.
like we've just been talking about it. We just talk about it maybe in the Philippine church's perspective. We are using our Philippine church hymnal as well, and nobody really has access to, not nobody, but only a few people have access to this international hymnal. So how do we learn those new
Ye-
hymns? Yeah.
Yeah, actually, when you were telling me that, I was thinking, how can we be creative in introducing? Well, I look back at my mother and AUP and PPH Church in way back in 1985 when she introduced a lot of the songs. Well, my mom was a classmate of James Bingham at Andrews, your school, and we have been singing also, songs of the King's Heralds, and we know that Wayne Hooper has a big influence. But if we look at the musical side, okay, rhythm wise, there are some hymns that can be exciting. For
Mm-hmm.
example, sing a new song to the Lord. Diba?
Yeah.
Pum, 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 pum. So it's in a minor key, but it's exciting. And then another one is Redeemed, how I love to proclaim it, redeemed, di ba? By the blood of the Lamb. So, uh, it's parang it's balanced. It's not in a dance like and very parang ano, di ba? You don't groove to it, but it's joyful. But
Yes.
for example, sing a new song is in a minor key, di ba?
Mm-hmm.
So I think those are some of the things that our church music ministers should consider. Well, not all hymns should be in a major key. Sometimes we have to consider what minor key. Sometimes we have
Mm-hmm.
to consider. Sometimes it has to be slow and reflective, like as water to the thirsty, di ba? Uh,
Yes.
yeah, and then uh, some compositions, the compositions of Melvin West, composition of I forgot the other name of the composer, but I think we do sing them a
Yeah.
lot as well. Uh, anyway,
It's
something
okay.
like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. This I remember a lot of the wordings of this hymns also
Mm.
we can relate now because like the ancient hymns, some people would be complaining, oh, I don't really know that word, it's so ancient, right? But these newer hymns, they have a tone of modern words, but still you can really feel that you're worshiping when you're singing them.
Yes. Yes.
um
A,
so
a musician that I really admire, for example, the way he introduced new hymns or new arrangements is Dr. Rodney Abriol, for example. Dr.
okay.
Rodney Abriol is very particular with the text, the lyrics, right? But when
Hmm.
it comes, but he's also a composer. So his first album of arrangements, you can really see that and hear that he is also introducing new hymns, and then he is also reintroducing the old ones. Like I think, oh,
Hmm.
when shall I see Jesus?
Jesus, that's right.
Yeah, tararam, papam, pam, 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 tirari, diba that's an old hymn?
Yeah.
Tararam, pararam, in the morning, something like that. But it's also the way we play it in church, the way we play it. Sometimes we tend to be sentimental, but we think that it's a slow hymn, but there's actually a way of singing it in a faster version.
So
But still,
the way
mm,
that you're describing it in the musical sense, right? But
mm,
I'm just thinking, not a lot. How do we make it practical? Because not a lot of churches have a musician that can, like say,
okay.
this is how we do it. This is a minor key, and this should be this fast,
Yes,
and
yes.
how do we make it practical for
we
those people?
create we create accompaniment recordings minus ones. Yeah, because
Mm,
the problem is, we don't have minus ones, or yeah, accompaniment that's available, that's majestic or symphonic, or with a brass ensemble, or it's just basically exposure, exposure.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm. That's
I
true.
look at the what they call that, Jehovah's Witness. I went to their church service. They don't have a pianist. I mean, they lack musicians, but wow, they're singing their songs. It's like singing in an orchestra, singing in it's very majestic, glorious, like singing in a big choir. So it's just a matter of exposing those who do not have musicians, but the music that they listen to. It should
Yeah.
not just be. I mean, I understand. We all people love gospel music, diba? We love all the well, we're born into the heritage singers. We have faith, ano ba yun? Faith first, and all of that. But they're the ones kasi who make this music. So why not record. Like for example, um, Sister Irene, you could also record like hymns, diba?
Actually,
Have, yeah,
just in
yeah.
hymns for worship, actually, there's a accompaniment there for every hymn. That is,
Mm-hmm.
I really started out that website where I wanted to provide accompaniment because I know that there are churches who doesn't have a pianist, who does not have a guitarist. So they're really just left to just singing a cappella, and so they will just sing the same old songs they know over and over
Yeah,
because
exactly.
there's
Yeah.
no accompaniment, and then there's no one to really introduce it. No one knows how to study a new one, so that
Yeah,
was
yeah, yeah.
really the goal of hymns for worship. But I'm just thinking, like, on the level of those people who have access to it, what can be like a practical way to encourage and enhance people's interest in hymns in a way that's not just in a local level, but like in a really like national level, and just in a Adventist setting still.
Well,
We're brainstorming. you know
yeah, yeah. I know, I know. Well, I have. I have to say this. No, um, in the Adventist setting, we are no different from other denominations where we look up to a singer who is kind of like a parang showbiz personality to us, di ba? So we need those singers to also believe in the hymns. Because
mm,
otherwise, they will just be imitating most of our groups, di ba? They just imitate Sandy Pappy, Michael W.
mhm.
Smith, Steve Green. Parang
Yeah.
that's the way they do it. So if you have a personality like Jennifer LaMountain, for example, she's there at the PICC, but um, does she have arrangement of hymns or even Sabbath hymns?
Yeah.
So if
Yeah.
she could do
Yeah.
that, then it could be a big influence.
That's true.
Uh, Gone are the days of before the big influences are the King's Heralds, Del Care, diba there?
Yeah. And they would
But
sing
now
hymns. Yeah.
we're into contemporary singing, and so of course the hymns are forgotten.
Yeah. And I think there should be a rebirth, a renaissance,
Yes,
so to
exactly.
speak, of
Yes.
of you
Yeah.
know of hymns. And we need to gain this interest back because it's really important. And aside from the what you mentioned a while ago, the depth of the messages and how it can help musically, so to speak. um, Many of these hymns are really rooted, a lot of the lines are really rooted in the scriptures, versus if you would be
Mhm.
singing, and I know I'm going on to deep waters when I would compare it to a CCM where it's not so deep. It's just, okay, this is how I feel, kind of thing, versus a hymn that has a grounded in the scripture kind of stuff. um I was thinking, and I did not include this in the questions that I sent to you, but I was brainstorming with another musician about the possibility of having a hymn camp or a hymn festival for Seventh day Adventists. I know other religions have been doing this also to promote their own hymns. Do you think this is something feasible for our Adventist culture to have something like this?
Definitely, definitely. Um, Hymn camp and festival. I was just talking to Randy Simatupang, no? um, Indonesian. He now is the head of the music department at the Mamsi Church, and I was telling him, there are um, Faber and Alfred have actually hymns that are in different levels, from
Yeah,
preparatory to level 4. So
yeah,
this is something that our children can play.
Yeah.
Okay, so they will then they will learn hymns instead of the usual, well, instead of the usual either folk songs or well, it's folk songs are also important, but but we could that this can be something special for the hymn camp. And then, for example, learning sight reading. So
Yeah.
I'm a believer in numbers, no? 1 2 3 4 5 4 3 2 1. So uh, 1 1 1 2 3 2 1 1 1 4 4 3 2 3. The sacred anthem is actually, if you analyze it, it's so perfect for sight reading.
Mm.
The only reason perhaps it's not being sight read or uh, read by other musicians is it's in three flats. So if we change it to D major, it will be easier.
Yes.
Yeah,
And
it's difficult. A violinist will have a hard time with E flat major. A pianist will also have a hard time. So put it to D major, put it to C major, make that as your sight reading, diba? One
that's
one
true.
one 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 4 5 6 5 5 5 5 5, diba? Or in Kodai, do, diba? Fa sol la. That will be
I'm
your sight
excited.
reading.
I
To teach
know.
them, diba? Oh,
This is
so
a
it's
fun
all hymn
activity
based.
for this would be such a fun activity for a hymns camp, like learning how to sight read
Mhm.
this way, using the hymns this way. Oh, it's gonna be so much. It's
You know
gonna
the
be so
Asian
cool.
Theological, I sorry, not Asian Theological, but Asian Institute for Liturgy and Music, for example. Uh, Dr. Francisco Feliciano and Lucrecia Casilan. I saw a book when I was teaching at Philippine Women's that the melodic dictation that they use are actually hymns.
Really,
So, I mean, you can use that as your melodic dictation.
that's true. Yeah,
Diba?
because I'm
What,
just
and you
able
have to,
to.
yeah, easy lang, di ba? And then transposing it in different keys. Pwede rin, di ba? And then
Yes.
direct out you could go straight to four-part harmony, and then progression, then perfect.
Actually, I noticed that you have a Mormon hymnal behind you,
Yes,
and
Latter-day Saints, yes.
yes, the Latter Day Saints. And if you would go to their website as well, they have this whole section about their hymnal, and for free you can download graded, uh, like those books that you just mentioned a while ago, where you can teach children in grades of like books graded by Faber. They have that same thing
Mhm.
as well, but instead of just general hymns, they're using their hymnal. So it's really nice.
You know the
Okay, so
this exactly, yes.
yeah, but keep going. You were gonna say something.
Oh, I was saying this. I wouldn't call it a problem, but this what it's not only in the Adventist church, but in most churches we are now lacking pianists. We are now lacking
Mm.
um, instrumentalists who would play hymns. You would be surprised uh, if you go to a fundamentalist Baptist church. I thought when you say fundamentalist, then they would be very strict with uh, with the Bible, biblical text. But when it comes to music, wow, it's praise and worship, and it's all with drums and all. No more hymns. So how can it be fundamentalist without the hymns? And hymns is like the
Yeah.
foundation of the church, especially the Protestant church. And
Yes.
I forgot a while ago to tell you. I mean, I was doing my research before before this live streaming, and Isaac Watts is considered,
Mhm.
one of the fathers of the hymnal, and the whole world looks up to England when it comes to the coronation of the Queen, the death of the Queen, coronation of Prince Charles, maybe soon King William, you know. And if we look at their coronation service, wow, it is full of hymns. It's really their tradition. And look at that, we are all amazed, not just our church, everybody. So let's make that as an example. And then
I
our
know.
choir, our choirs love singing a cappella. So let's sing hymns in a cappella. That can also be.
So let's talk about the doctrines that make Seventh Day Adventists
Okay.
unique, right? Why is it so important that we're still learning all this, especially the Sabbath hymns, the Second Coming hymns, and all these other hymns that make us distinct?
Okay. I let me just give you a background or how I, how I came into this advocacy of mine of the Sabbath hymns.
Yes.
Um, about 10 years ago, oh no, 20 years ago, um, 2004. This was my first year of teaching at the Ateneo de Manila University. They asked me to create an elective called, and I named it Liturgical Music History and Traditions.
Okay.
Okay, so I've been teaching this until I moved to Batanes in 2019. And what does my class do? We observe all kinds of worship services. Okay, observe the liturgy, etc. So since I created this class and up to now, I could say that I have actually observed almost all religions, Christian religions, and those who also believe in God, because there are some religions who don't believe that Christ is God. But I have attended all of their services. Name it, name all. I have been there. So one thing I noticed is that when you attend a Methodist, Baptist, Presbyterian, UCCP, what else? Adventist, worship service, divine worship service. It's very much the same. We sing our after the offering. You sing the doxology. You have an opening hymn. You have a closing hymn. You have a prayer response. There's no, it's no difference at all. So when I go back to my mom in AUP and her experience in as being a church musician. So uh, well, 45 to 50 years ago, when we were all active at PPH Church, and then and as part of the church music seminars that she gives and other AUP professors uh, mentioned that and in AUP it's the worship service, welcoming the Sabbath and having a Sabbath hymn. It distinguishes us. It makes us unique. And so when you attend an Adventist worship service, the divine worship service, and you have a Sabbath hymn, crowning jewel of creation, blessed Sabbath made for man, or the sacred anthem, slowly rise. So when you have that, then you could say, oh, I'm in an Adventist worship service. Okay. Oh, so what is this all about? Oh, I'm in a service that they believe that the seventh day is the Sabbath. So it has that big influence. If we don't have that, then we are just the same as the others. I mean, isn't it part of the Adventist history that they all left their Protestant religions or denominations, and they became Adventists because of the Sabbath. So I go to Union Church of Manila. I go to the United Central Methodist Church, to the Bible Baptist Church. In Batanes, we have a lot of Baptist churches as well. You go to I go to a Makati ward of the Latter Day Saints, and you I mean it's the same, no? The hymns, it's all the same. So let's make it different. Now, let's even make it specific. Now, other religions, they do have hymns that say about the Sabbath, right? Because this Sabbath hymns did not start with the Adventists, because before that, people believed that the Sabbath was Sunday. Or you have the Latter Day Saints, and they even have more Sabbath hymns. So how do we make it different? We have Adventist authors who have actually written for hymns in the SDA hymnal, and it really specifies what day of the week, what happened during creation,
Start on a
everything.
Friday.
Exactly, yeah. Yeah, so a Friday, it even says, diba, there's a story that on a Friday we prepare, and there are even hymns to before the Sabbath, on sunset on Friday, welcoming the Sabbath. So let's use that, so that we really are seventh day. Now, what's the well, what I'm glad though that most churches have this at the end about the second coming. No, Adventists, we believe in the second coming, and partly because of, well, the influence of the General Conference. Although it is not really done in other countries, I think the Philippines is just really a musical country that whatever the General Conference as every 5 years has a new theme song, then we would sing it after our service. But glad, I mean, at least it's about the second coming. So there you go. That's the reason why I have this advocacy. Let us all make sure that we have a Sabbath hymn composed by an Adventist in our church service.
Amen. Yeah, I will challenge your advocacy, because my advocacy is to have more hymns on the sanctuary, because this
Yes,
is
okay.
what really makes the Adventists really distinct as well. The our beliefs
Yes.
and our theology regarding the sanctuary. And if you would look at the hymnal, there's maybe one or two, and it's not even by an Adventist regarding the
Yes,
sanctuary.
exactly.
You know,
Yeah.
so I believe that in our church service, it should always reflect these distinct beliefs, and I call it the SSS. And I mean, this is not original from me, but um, it's SSS, meaning the Sabbath, the second coming, and the sanctuary. Those things should always be a theme that should be used in our churches every Sabbath, every time our
Mm.
worship, because the repetition of that will of course encourage the people to also study more about it. And then, when they're singing about the Sabbath, they will reverence the Sabbath more, have more respect for the day. When you're singing a lot about the second coming, then you are more excited about the second coming. And when you're singing about the sanctuary, then you have an idea of what is happening today. And as Jesus, as the priest, is in the most holy place interceding for us. That's a
Mm.
theology that we are not really discussing a lot, you know. So that's what I really.
But I'm glad. I think in the new directive, I would say directive recommendation of the North Philippine Union Conference, that there's a prayer.
Yeah,
I think
actually
it's
the
the
prayer response that they have that
oh yeah,
sanctuary.
where Jesus intercedes, diba?
Yes.
There's a place, da 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 da,
Hmm.
something like that.
So,
Yeah.
so that's good. Yeah. Anyway, so as we wrap up our discussion on hymns, how important it is for our church, and how relevant it is still for today, What's your final advice for the new generation? How can we keep the hymns alive? And maybe like talk also about um, the importance of singing these new songs and not singing the same things over and over again, because I know I've been to several places and it's always to God be the glory, and I think, is there any other songs that we can sing, and it's the opening song, it's the closing song, it's sometimes it's a really good hymn, but what about the verse that says sing a new song, right? Because
Yes,
in Psalms
exactly.
we need to be
Yes.
singing these new songs, but people apply it to be the CCM songs.
Mm. What is CCM?
Contemporary Christian music, meaning songs that are composed by people who are still alive, basically, or like around
Oh,
the
that's
20th
what
century or
they.
the 21st century, you know.
So they consider it that style.
They consider it to be the new song. That's why the application for the text sing a new song. It's not the old hymns because they are old. The new songs are the ones that are now.
Mm, okay, okay, okay. Because I have a different definition of
That,
contemporary. Eh.
that
Yeah,
well,
yeah,
we will
yeah.
welcome your
Well,
definition.
contemporary when it comes to style, no, when it comes to style.
Well, yeah,
Contemporary music, yeah, yeah, I have a different definition. And like what I said, even in England, right, in Great Britain, but they still compose hymns.
yes, yeah.
They still
They have a
compose.
rich hymn tradition, so
Mm, yeah.
I would expect. But yeah, so what would be your last words? Just to wrap
Okay.
up here.
First of all, uh, I think it's not really. Please forgive me if I say this. It's not really the new generation, but the ones who are leading our church. For example, when I gave my seminar at Mamsi Church, what I recommended is that the choir leads the service as well, rather than just going there for the special number or message in song, or going to the pulpit for the responses, but they should really be part of the service. So how can we make that special? Well, okay, if you have a hymn that is four stanzas, the first stanza can be the congregation. Second stanza can be the choir a cappella, SAPB, right? Okay. Third stanza can just be the ladies, the women, and then the fourth stanza, everybody with the strings. So, what am I saying here? um, we need to make our young generation, we need to make them part of the service. Okay, even and but I'm actually happy this is happening, because you go to Manila Center, you go to Pasay Adventist Church, and even AUP a lot, in Cavite, almost everyone is, it's like everybody wants to play the violin. Everybody wants to play the violin, and so that they can be seen in church playing the violin, then they have to practice, and then suddenly they're there just playing hymns. So include them, because if you include them in the worship service, then they would be encouraged. They would be encouraged to join. Now, how do we revive these hymns? Then somebody has to assign. For example, okay, for the opening, the what do you call that? The prelude, instead of the organ doing it, you assign it to the choir. The choir will sing an a cappella version. Okay, or but it really it really depends on the the head of the music department of the church. Offertory. Okay. You have an old hymn that the string ensemble will play. Okay. So that's how I would encourage. It's I know it's difficult. It's difficult, but you just have to make it part of their service. It's really exposure, and you cannot force them. But if you tell them, oh, we want you to be part of us, we want you to have a variety of singing, not just everybody singing, then perhaps we can influence them. Yeah, I think that's about it.
Yes, yeah, that's good. So many ideas. I'm so excited to just keep going and going because it's really inspiring for me to talk about these things and because sometimes things can become like a bit hopeless and bleak when I go to certain churches where, oh my, they really need a lot of help with their song service. Like it's really sad, and I really pray that we will have more musicians that would have a service oriented kind of mindset where the church will be one of their burdens to kind of like really improve on. And I really pray and hope that by talking about it, by um, opening, exposing certain topics about it, that people will kind of come to understand really the importance of these things.
I just want to add one last thing.
Yes.
For the past 5 years, I've been living in Batanes, and of course, most of our church members there, they're just used to singing the old hymns, whatever they, like what you said, to God be the glory, showers of blessing. So, what do I do to influence them? I mean, I don't really impose. So, what do I do when they ask me to sing a message in song? Then I will sing something from the hymnal that they don't know. Then at least they hear something new. Okay? Or if they ask me to lead the uh, song service, okay, then I would teach something that's new. So I think it also has to come from us. If nobody believes you, nobody wants to do it, then there are many ways of influencing people. Yeah.
That's right. Well, thank you so much for your time, Prof. Batanes or Jonathan.
Thank you.
Hopefully, we can invite you again. But in the meantime, we will end here and we'll see you again.
Thank you.
And so I think that as we conclude with this episode, what I'd really like to leave is this: learning hymns first starts with you, with me. And when you're interested in it, then you share it with family. Then your family shares it with the church, and the church shares it with the community. It's a ripple effect. And many times we have a mindset of what can we benefit from the church, but have we ever thought of what the church can benefit from us? And I don't mean to brag or show off our skills and resources, but what can we do in the simplest of way to keep our brothers and sisters encouraged in this pilgrim journey we are in? Learning hymns, understanding them, and singing them together is a great way to do this. In fact, it has been scientifically proven that by singing together in a group contributes tremendously for the good of our well-being. We're going to unpack how precisely it does, but just so you know, the musical structure of the hymnal, as simple as it is, really facilitates congregational singing. Also, music leaders and worship leaders should work together to make worship parts related together. One united front and message helps the congregation to have something tangible. You have the central message of the hour, all other parts should relate to that. The Sabbath school lesson and all things should relate to that. Sometimes we cram so many things in the program and so many different messages not relating to each other. And so it's the job of the presider and the musicians to bridge these gaps through the songs and the short speaking parts. And so, anyway, this is not the end of the series, but rather the end of discussing I'm a Pilgrim. And I hope that you have learned something useful and practical. If you would visit Hymns for Worship, we have so many resources there. We had accompaniments for all the hymns in the hymnal and so much more. And so we would like to end here. We would like to see you for next week, where we're going to start on a new hymn. And so it really promises to be good. So as we end, let us have a word of prayer. Our dear Heavenly Father, thank you so much for this time that we have spent together. It was a little bit long this time, but we just know, Lord, that when we talk about ways that we can please you and glorify you and make our worships more meaningful through music, we believe, Lord, that you are in this place and that your spirit is with us. Lord, help us to be responsible and in our the way that we use music, the way that we engage with music, and also, Lord, help us to be more creative in the ways that we use music in our worship service. Thank you so much for this hymn, I Am a Pilgrim, where it reminded us that our lives here on earth are just short and we are just tarrying, and that we know that our destination, the heavenly home, is the real reason why we are here. Thank you so much for the Sabbath day, that as we close, we would just like to praise and honor and glorify you as we embark on a new week. Thank you so much, dear Father. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. Thank you so much, everyone, and we hope to see you on our next episode. God bless and bye bye.
This media is brought to you by Hymns for Worship, a website dedicated to help church members sing with spirit and understanding. If you want more resources on hymns, please go to www.hymnsforworship.org.